In the 1950s, the kitchen was the pride of the American home. Chrome gleamed, pastel plastics promised the future, and magazines swore that the right gadget would save time and impress guests. Some inventions lasted, most didn't, but each one tells a story.
Take the ice crusher. Cocktail parties were everywhere, and if you wanted crushed ice for a Tom Collins, you cranked it by hand. Loud, messy, ice flying across the counter. Kids begged for shards just to chew. By the early 60s, blenders made it obsolete. The crusher went straight to the junk drawer, next to bottle openers and dead batteries. Open that same drawer, and you might find a wire carrier for milk bottles. The clink of glass at dawn meant the milkman had been by. 4 bottles, heavy and wet with condensation. Moms carried them steady. Kids swung them dangerously until someone yelled. By the late 50s, supermarkets pushed cartons. Home delivery faded, and the carriers turned into flower holders on porches. At dinner parties, gelatin molds ruled the table. Rings, domes, even fish shapes, filled with pineapple, marshmallows, sometimes carrots. Under the dining room light, it looked like art. Guests clapped politely. Nobody wanted seconds. Kids poked it with a spoon just to see the wobble. By the 70s, the molds were stacked at yard sales, 25 cents each. Clutter from a forgotten fad. And then there were butter warmers. Tiny pans balanced over candles, meant to melt butter for lobster or corn. Ads showed happy families dipping seafood. Reality was scorched butter, wax on the table, and cleanup nobody wanted. Once microwaves came, the warmers disappeared overnight. Coffee drinkers had their own ritual. Hand-turned grinders squeaked in kitchens across America. A wooden box, a crank, beans rattling inside. The smell was fresh, the work was slow. Some neighbors joked you could tell who was awake by the grinding sound through the walls. Kids begged to try, gave up after 10 turns. By the mid-60s, supermarkets sold pre-ground coffee, and the little grinders sat on shelves like decoration.
Summer cookouts brought another fad, corn cob holders. Bright plastic handles shaped like mini cobs, stuck into each end to keep fingers clean. In theory. In practice, one once always missing, buried in the drawer under rubber bands and old receipts. Napkins were faster. The holders never came back. Knife sharpeners tried to go electric. Ads promised razor edges at the push of a button. Sparks flew, knives screamed, and the results were worse than before. Kids were scared, cooks were annoyed. Most people went back to whetstones or called the man with the grinding wheel who drove through neighborhoods. The electric sharpener faded fast. Refrigerators of the 50s came with egg racks, chrome or plastic trays built for a dozen. Eggs lined up neatly, futuristic in design. But once eggs arrived pre-packed in cartons, the racks lost their purpose. Most were tossed, a few survived empty. Collectors chase them now for their atomic-age look. At socials and bridge nights, hosts pulled out little party hot plates, brightly decorated,
plugged into the wall, they kept meatballs and casseroles warm until they burned the food or scorched the tablecloth. By the 70s, crock pots did the job better, and the hot plates vanished. On the bar cart, nothing looked cooler than a soda siphon. Chrome body, glass bottle inside, a hiss of CO2 at the pull of a trigger. Cocktails fizzed. Kids stared wide-eyed. But the cartridges cost money, and by 1958, bottled soda sold for pennies. The siphon turned from tool to decoration.
Breakfast tables often had glass juicers. Half an orange pressed against a heavy glass reamer. Twist, twist, juice dripping down the spout. Seed slipped through, pulp clogged the grooves. It worked, but slowly. Electric juicers promised speed. Cartons offered convenience. The glass ones ended up at thrift shops, reminders of sticky mornings. Coffee made another appearance with the percolator. The bubbling sound defined mornings. Water cycling endlessly, steam rattling the lid. Strong coffee, sometimes too strong. Moms polished chrome pots before bridge club, proud of the shine, even if the taste wasn't ideal. By the late 60s, drip machines offered smoother coffee, and the percolator became nostalgia. Some gadgets tried to tackle salad. Early spinners were wire baskets or cloth bags. You pumped or swung them by hand. Sometimes the lettuce dried. Sometimes the kitchen floor did instead. Towels worked better. The spinners disappeared, only to return decades later in plastic form. Even opening cans went electric. Bulky countertop machines hummed, chewed through lids, and sometimes jammed halfway. Crumbs stuck inside. A handheld opener cost $1 and worked every time. By the 80s, most electric versions were collecting dust in garages.
Bread slicers promised even slices at home. What families got was noise, crumbs, and blades that looked dangerous. And since sliced bread was already cheap in stores, why bother? Most families tried it once, then pushed it into the pantry, never touched again. Desserts had their own gadget. Whipped cream dispensers looked like science lab equipment. A metal canister, a tiny gas cartridge, a lever that hissed. Press it and cream sprayed out, unless the nozzle clogged, which are often dead. By the mid-70s, spray cans ruled every shelf. The fancy dispensers ended up in thrift stores. Each of these gadgets carried a promise. Faster meals, cleaner hands, and pressed guests. Most failed, but the memories stuck. The clatter of ice crushers, the smell of percolated coffee, the wobble of a Jell-O mold in the center of the table. Small moments that made up the optimism of mid-century America, when the future felt like it lived right on the kitchen counter.